The last time I reviewed a watch from Yema, I reviewed the Yema Flygraf, and I called that one an affordable grail. For around $750, it offers a lot of things that you usually don't find in watches below $1,000, and a lot of those things are qualities that people would look for in what they would consider to be a grail watch. Today's watch is a completely new design, and this is not a dive watch, it's a pilot's watch, and despite that, I think it meets a lot of the same criteria for an affordable grail that Yema Flygraf did. Today we're taking a look at the Yema Flygraf. Let's check it out. Hey guys, welcome back to Just the Watch, the budget watch collecting channel. My name's Dave, and this is a channel where I like to talk about everything related to budget watch collecting. And if there's one thing guys that are into budget watch collecting like, it's thinking about watches that they can't get because they're too expensive. And so that's where this idea of kind of like an affordable grail comes in. Because if you're like me, there's not really much purpose in having a $10,000 grail watch. But a $750 grail watch, that's something that I might conceivably save up and go for. And so every once in a while, it's fun to look at some of these watches that are a little bit outside of maybe our price range comfort zone. And Yema was kind enough to loan in one of their new Flygrafs. So this is a watch that I got for the review. I will be sending it back to Yema after the review is done. But it is one that I have really enjoyed my time with and getting to play around with it. Now, Yema is known primarily for their dive watches, but actually their history and their heritage is really broad. They've been into racing watches, they've been in partnerships with the French military and the French Air Force, so they have done pilots' watches and, aerospace-themed watches before. However, the Flygraf, to my knowledge, is a completely new design. It's not a reissue of something from their back catalog. It's something that they've done kind of new and fresh, and it really shows that it's a very interesting take on the pilot's watch. The finishing is phenomenal. I think they've done just such a great job of creating something that looks very, very impressive and unique and well finished without being really super attention grabbing. There's just this real beautiful subtlety to it in the way that they've done it. So it has the classic look of a pilot's watch with that really high contrast, black on white, easy to read design. But in particular, the brushed dial and matching brushed bezel just really has a phenomenal look, depending on the lighting and the angles that it hits. It's something really unique that I haven't seen before. And it's not like a traditional Flieger pilot's watch at all. This is a 39 millimeter sized watch, so much smaller than you would typically find in a pilot's watch. It also has 300 meters of water resistance, so they're taking some of their dive heritage and their ability to create a watch with a high water resistance, and they're putting that into their aviation piece, which is kind of a cool touch. But then at that size and that capability, it starts to function and act a lot like a field watch too. Some people might prefer a watch that has more of a pure cohesive design that kind of sticks to one thing. But if you're like me and you kind of like a little bit of everything, I don't really mind them sort of blurring the line between these types of watches and creating something that just looks beautiful, it's comfortable on the wrist, wears well, and yeah, just has something that's really fresh and unique about it. Now, all of those good things aside, I did have one problem with this watch in the quality control and the manufacturing of it, so I'll get into that as soon as we jump in. But that was kind of unfortunate to see because the rest of the package is, I think, a really well put together watch. So I would hope that the quality control and the manufacturing would live up to that. Anyways, all that said, let's go ahead and check out the watch and take a look at it. Okay, dimensions and specifications on the Flygraf. You're getting 39 millimeters across, but it does wear a little bit larger because of the kind of fairly large crown guards you have coming out of the side there. And this being a pilot's watch, you do have a fairly oversized crown. In this case, it's not like an onion crown or anything. It's just a standard, rounded crown with some nice knurling on it. Lug to lug, you are getting 48 millimeters, and then lug openings, you're getting 19 millimeters. So odd sized. It's kind of more of a classic size. It's the same that they use on a lot of their dive watches. So that's going to be kind of a bummer for a lot of people. I think standard 20 millimeter would have made it a lot easier to change out different straps. But the strap that they've given you is a very nice strap. It matches the character of the watch perfectly. It's this kind of black canvas strap with a nice soft leather backing behind it. Very comfortable, very classic, fits the watch, yeah, really well. Thickness is a little bit chunky for a watch this size. It's about 12.5 millimeters, so not too thick at all, but thicker than you might have expected. But I think a lot of that is because this is actually a 300 meter water resistance rated watch. So they have packed a really impressive amount of water resistance into what is supposed to be a pilot's watch here. It has greater water resistance than most of the dive watches out on the market. Yema has a really rich diving heritage, and so they know what they're doing when it comes to water resistance. So it's kind of cool to see them bring that over to their pilot's watch here. All right, so is the Yema Flygraf also worthy of the title of affordable grail? I think it offers a lot that puts it into consideration for this title. The finishing and the dial work is absolutely beautiful, and this is just a very unique original design. It's a beautiful modern pilot's watch that really breaks a lot of the traditional pilot's watch conventions. On the dial, you are getting 24-hour markers on an inner ring, which is more typically found in field watches. You're also getting 300 meters of water resistance, which is more typically found in dive watches. But like a pilot's watch, it retains those 12-hour Arabics and high contrast, high legibility. And the dial is just absolutely beautiful, and it matches a very beautifully brushed bezel as well. So you're getting a vertically brushed bezel and dial that really provide a bit of a stunning look to the aesthetics of the watch. And inside, you're getting the Yema 2000 in-house automatic movement. This is an in-house movement that they have been developing themselves, and that's another thing that Yema has been doing to really differentiate themselves from a lot of other brands, particularly in this price range. They're currently, I believe, kickstarting a GMT in-house movement that they're working on, so they're expanding their in-house movement selection. And what they've done with their automatic movements is they've tried to make them slightly better spec'd than like the comparable ETA movements. So this is like the ETA 2824 and the Sleet SW200. This is a 28,800 beats per hour. Smooth sweeping second hand, so slightly higher beat rate than your standard Seiko NH35s. But the ETA 2824 and the Sleet SW200, those both have 38-hour power reserves. This one they've upped it to 42 hours for their version. And then the accuracy, ETA rates their standard grade movements at plus or minus 12 seconds a day. Yema has rated theirs at plus or minus 10 seconds a day. So that's the accuracy that you should be getting out of the box when you receive the watch. However, this review unit that I was sent is having some issues, and I want to get those out of the way before we go too much further in the review. So first off, the movement in this watch is running outside of spec. It's running at about plus 25 seconds a day, so well outside of their stated plus or minus 10 seconds. And that's the sort of thing that you would probably want to get in contact with Yema if you notice that with the watch. The watch does have a 2-year warranty, so if you got the watch and you notice that, you definitely want to contact Yema and get that straightened out. Now this one has an additional problem that is more severe than that, and that is that the crown stem, I'm guessing it's a little bit short. So this is a screw down crown, which helps with that 300 meters of water resistance. However, when you unscrew a watch all the way, typically it will pop out. This one doesn't quite do that like it's supposed to. So I think the stem is a little bit short. So what happens is you unscrew it, and then which should put it into the winding position, and then if you try and wind it, it immediately starts screwing back in. Okay, so you can't really wind it like that. So the only way you can effectively wind the watch is to kind of unscrew it, and then screw it a little bit, and then unscrew it again, and then screw it. So you can kind of go back and forth and work it like that. I'm not sure how great that is on the movement. It might provide, might give additional wear on the movement, and that's also could be contributing to the accuracy issues. It might be that I'm not able to wind the watch fully, and that is resulting in some less than ideal winding conditions that are reducing the accuracy of the watch. So it's unfortunate that it happens. These things do happen with watches. So it's just kind of a good reminder that whenever you get a new watch, make sure you check it thoroughly. And, if you do need to get something like that taken care of, that you contact the manufacturer and get it straightened out. So with that out of the way, let's go ahead and talk about the rest of the watch because, that was unfortunate because the rest of the watch is really cool and I think definitely worth your time. So let's go ahead and jump in and take a closer look at the dial. So you can see that textured brush pattern is very noticeable in certain lightings, and it's just a really cool look. It's kind of a subtle thing. It's something that you don't always notice. It doesn't scream for attention, and I really like that. But they've just done such a great refinement on it. Inside the dial on this kind of inner ring, you're getting a sort of grooved circle, and then within that circle, you're getting 24-hour markings, which will help you in telling military time if you need to. And then that's also where they put most of the dial markings. You get the Yema logo, the automatic 300 feet, and then this little loomed airplane marker as well to kind of remind you that this is a pilot's watch. And then down below you have France. This is a watch that is manufactured and assembled in France. So another cool major selling point to that. You're getting a watch manufactured in Europe. And there's not a lot of French watch companies out there. Also, those Arabic numerals are very heavily printed on there. I believe these are just printed, but they are raised above the dial a significant degree. If you can see that at certain angles, they really pop off, but I believe that's just because they are applied with multiple layers of lume. And the lume is very good on this watch. It's pretty bright and lasts a long time. It's BGW9, so you get a really cool contrast there with that black dial and then the white indexes, and then they glow blue in the dark. Handset is also something I really like, especially that hour hand. It's kind of a unique sort of syringe-like shape, kind of a cross between a sword hand and a syringe hand, and it just stretches right to the line on that inner ring. So nice proportions there, with the minute hand going pretty much all the way out to the chapter ring on the edge of the watch. The second hand is nice big white second hand with a red tip, which is also kind of a cool touch, and that second hand is fully lumed as well. Finishing on the watch and the case. So again, that bezel is a kind of a big, bold bezel, but it is fixed. It's a fixed bezel. There's no markings on it. It just has a vertical brushing, and that vertical brushing lines up, really well with the brushing on the dial. So it's a really kind of cool transition between the two, and just a neat visual trick. I haven't ever seen a watch do that before. And, just overall, the level of refinement and the thought put into the design here, I think Yema has done a great job of doing so many interesting little things that just work together really perfectly without it just going crazy. I mean, a lot of times, I think on micro brands, they really want to stand out and be noticed, and you get a lot of kind of clashing design elements and a lot of things that are really kind of crazy and out there to try and grab attention. This is something that's just very refined. It's not a huge watch. This is like a small watch. It's only 39 millimeters, but it has a lot of wrist presence and a lot of really interesting visual cues, and it's a very nicely finished watch as well. As you rotate around to the side, you can see that the edge of the bezel is polished, so the top is brushed, and then you go to a polished bevel along the side of the bezel. And then that transitions into a nice vertically brushed mid case where the side there is vertically brushed. You're also getting drilled lugs, which is a nice sporty feature. It makes strap changes easier to do. And then overall, the case design is kind of this nice flowing curve, which helps it to wear pretty comfortably on the wrist. And then you've got a case back down there, solid case back. And the case back, they've done a really great job on it. It's just this really beautiful embossing. It's got their logo on it, but it's very smooth and kind of rounded. So it's not like a flat laser etched thing. It's got a lot of curves to it, and you kind of see that from different angles. It's a better case back than on the Navy Graph that I got. The Navy Graph one was very sharp on the lines. It was very flat. This one has a lot more depth and a lot more roundedness to it, which feels much higher quality. Okay, let's go ahead and dim the lights, and we'll check out the lume on this guy. Okay, so here's a quick shot of the Flygraf in kind of dim lighting, and you can see that BGW9 lume is really doing its job. This watch is pretty bright in the dark, very easy to read, and I especially love that fully lumed second hand that you can see moving around, and how they've loomed that little airplane icon as well. Nice little touches there. One other cool thing is that they've loomed the dots on the inner circle as well, so you get a lot of kind of cool little after dark effects there. They aren't really necessary for full functionality, which you definitely get with this. Again, the hands and the markers are very easy to read for a long time in the dark, but those little extra glowy bits kind of really make it look a lot cooler as well. All right, but with that out of the way, let's go ahead and test it against some other watches in my collection and see how it performs. So there are two main things I want to test with the lume on this watch. One is I want to see how it compares to the Yema Navy Graph, the last Yema that I reviewed. So that one's here in the test. And then I also want to try it up against some other Pilots watches that I have. So I have the Bull of a Lunar Pilot, Citizen Nighthawk, and a Jack Mason Aviator. And as you can see, the Yema Navy Graph does really well in this test. And I think the lume is very good. It's definitely a huge step up from the Navy Graph, which is nice to see. And the lume is very even. It's not the brightest lume in the test on all the metrics, but overall it's very legible and scores pretty highly, coming in third place on hand brightness, but actually first place on marker brightness, making it overall a very legible watch in the dark. All right, let's go on to the stock strap that's included with the Flygraf. It's a very nice canvas strap with a leather backing on it. So, a lot of times with stock straps, you're getting straps that are kind of throwaway that you want to get rid of. It's nice to see that they've really included a pretty high quality strap with this watch. Now that said, the watch is a very nice, simple, clean design, and it's something that will play well with a lot of different strap options. Unfortunately, one of the challenges is that this does have 19 millimeter lugs, so it is a little bit harder to source straps. However, there are some good options out there. One place that is really consistent in putting out straps in these odd sizes is Barton, and so I have it here on a green canvas strap from them. One of the nice things about the Barton straps is that they do not have a leather backing, so it's going to give you a little bit better water resistance, which is nice with that 300 meters of water resistance on the. Also, I think the green canvas gives a little bit more of a military style to it that I think fits the watch pretty well. For a little bit of a dressier option, I have this vintage distressed Italian leather strap from Vario, which they also offer now in 19 millimeter sizes, which is great. And I really think this gray distressed leather matches with the watch really well with that kind of monochrome look and gives it just a little extra touch of class. So 19 millimeters, a little bit difficult, but not impossible now to find straps for. All right, so now that we've seen the watch up close, let's talk a little bit about the main pros and cons of it as we wrap up this review. As stated before, the fit and finishing on the case, the bezel, the dial, the hands, all of that is top notch. And I don't know, I think just the overall design that Yema is bringing here is very refined. It's very kind of true to their own. It's very original. It's not like they're out there copying a lot of other brands. It's not like they're out there trying to just put really big and bright and blingy kind of things on there to grab attention. There's a lot of subtlety and refinement here that I think is often missing from like a lot of micro brands or fashion brands. You can tell that a lot of thought has gone into the design of this watch, and I think they pulled it off really well. And as I mentioned before, the fact that this watch is manufactured in France, that it has an in-house movement, and that it comes from a company like Yema are all great positives. And when you take all that into consideration, this is actually a really great value for what they're offering. Obviously, you can get a similarly spec'd watch for much cheaper if you go to Chinese manufacturing and off-the-shelf Japanese movements. But if this idea of something being manufactured in a different region of the world, if this idea of an in-house automatic movement is something that appeals to you as a watch collector, your options are really limited in this sort of sub $1,000 range. And so I really appreciate that Yema is, kind of putting out these different variations and these different types of watches that have all of that in it. So if you like dive watches, you have the Navy Graph and you have the Superman. And if you're now into pilot's watches, you now have the Flygraf to look at as a great option for kind of one of these affordable grails. On the negative side, obviously the biggest one is that problem with the crown and the winding mechanism and the performance of the movement inside. All of that is troubling. Now, I did reach out to Yema to get some comments about the issues that I had with the watch, and they mentioned that the watch that was sent out was a prototype and that they would forward the issues that I had to make sure that no one else gets those same problems. So hopefully this is something you won't see happening with the production models that get shipped out. So it's really cool that Yema has invested in creating their own in-house movement. That's on the positive side, but then on the kind of negative side is you are relying on that movement to be to turn out to be a good, functional, long-lasting movement, and you might also have a little bit more difficulty finding someone to service it. It might require being sent back to France and back to Yema. Now, from my dealings with Yema so far, I don't anticipate that you would have any problem facilitating a return like that, and I think their customer service should be able to handle that without problem. But let me hear from you guys. This is one part that I really like about this channel because, I can tell you about the watch that I have in hand, but I don't have a lot of experience with their after-sales support or, that sort of side of things. And a lot of you guys have, who are watching this have probably purchased watches from Yema, and you're probably able to speak more about that aspect of it than I am. So definitely leave me a comment down below. Let me know how Yema has handled these sorts of issues for you on watches that you might have purchased, and that way, kind of help round out the aspects of this review that I can't quite give just based on the single experience of the watch that I have in hand. Anyways, I think that's going to wrap it up for today. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll talk to you next time. Bye.